So what we're trying to do is to talk about this organizational technical issue around protocols. There are some basics that need talking about. For many of you, they'll be obvious and well known. For some of you, they may be less so. The challenges of a hybrid environment, and then the obvious questions: what's wrong with legacy protocols, and what do we get if we start using modern protocols? So I'll try to get to this. This whole thing is being recorded. You'll get a link if you registered with us before you joined. You'll get a link to the recording after the event. So the aim of this is that first of all, I'd like to ask you who you are, just to give us a bit of a framing for the session. So Jane's going to put up a poll to get you to answer a quick couple of questions about who you are and what your roles are. You don't have to answer these by any means. There's nothing compulsory about them. It just helps us to understand who we're talking to over time. So I'm seeing mostly practitioners, but a good proportion of decision makers as well. Give you another few seconds. Okay, let's close that one. Looks like you've all said what you want to say. I think we've got one more to do. And this is just a little bit about whether you're more on the developer side or architectural. Okay. Yeah, big emphasis on identity and security, certain amount of systems architecture. A few more seconds. Okay, very good. So thank you for that. So the thing is, I work with a lot of customers to discuss particularly cloud architectures, and I find that the people who are making decisions often lack, and they say this themselves, they lack sufficient information really to make the right decisions to set up identity infrastructure going forward. And the problem is that a number of fields have to come together, and I've listed them here. So some people who are organizing identity come out of a sort of application background, so they maybe were responsible for Exchange and therefore Active Directory, or maybe they were responsible for Active Directory as a single thing, maybe they were responsible for Office, and now they've got Office 365 on their plate. But the point is they don't necessarily come from a security background, so they're lacking a certain amount of breadth on the issue of security, including the sorts of attacks we can expect. There are certain things we can do to prevent attacks, but if we've got an insecure algorithm in play, there's not much we can do about that. There are algorithms that are simply broken, and we simply need to stop using them, but we need to understand that. We need to understand the issues around reporting for audit and compliance purposes, and how we can get not just to a secure place, but also to be provably secure, and to report on that. So if you like, on the downside of not clearing up these issues, we have typically security problems. The main problem with the old protocols is they're not terribly secure. However, the new protocols provide some opportunities for integrations in particular that we would be missing if we didn't use them. So we have some architectural opportunities, particularly around low maintenance collaboration. The new protocols are pretty good for inter-organizational work. Delegated access is going to be an issue. We'll talk about that. And one of my big subjects that I spend a lot of time with customers at the moment is reducing the burden on the DMZ, on the perimeter network, for things like application access, because the new protocols can get through proxies particularly well. They're designed for this, and we will talk about that in a moment. Those are kind of basic protocol issues. I consider the issue around authentication, such as passwords, also to be a protocol issue. Passwords are and I'll explain why. But passwords are a big issue with us. They cause a lot of friction, getting your initial password, resetting your password, forgetting your password, and so on. And of course, as we probably all know, they are fundamentally insecure in any case. So over the long term, we would like to reduce password use. Certainly, if we have to use passwords, make them frictionless as far as possible, but reduce the use of passwords and ultimately obsolete passwords, so we don't actually have to use passwords at all. So there's a number of issues. Now, as you can imagine, these issues have an organizational component as well as a technical one. I just want to put up a couple of slides, and I don't mean to be rude about this, but this is kind of an old world slide for us. I mean, those of us who are as old as I am remember much older worlds than this, but this is the old world really from our cloud perspective these days. So we have a situation where there's an Active Directory, there's a whole bunch of stuff running in Windows, Exchange, File and Print, some other Kerberos integrated stuff that's working with Active Directory. That's all fine, that's kind of single sign-on and working well. We will have other silos typically. We'll have SAP systems, or we'll have Oracle-based systems, or some other system that is not necessarily fully integrated with Windows. That's a pretty normal situation, and we're kind of used to living with that to some extent. And certainly in the old world, when we were dealing with the internet, any accesses to the internet were pretty much individual logons. Users would have got a subscription to something and they'd have a username and password, and we didn't even expect anything much in the way of integration or unification of logons and so on. So this was kind of the old world. I expect you all recognize that from your not so distant past in some cases. And the future looks a lot more like this, we think. So there's a discussion to be had about the cloud side. So at the top there, you can see the cloud with Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. Most organizations are using more than one provider. We have, as a Microsoft-focused organization, focused around the Azure Active Directory identity in the cloud. I'm not proposing to explain everything on this slide, but the key difference is here, we have some new challenges. We have a perimeter in the middle of our infrastructure, which we didn't really have before. So that big thick line in the middle is our perimeter. We've got issues of application access. We've got issues of mobility of the users. So our yellow user there may be inside the network using a company provided device. Then they go home and use their private device or their phone or somebody else's device. They are mobile and they are platform mobile as well. So we need to provide, as far as possible, seamless access to a whole bunch of applications based on a transparent environment where the user can use a device and be in a location and not concern themselves with how to connect or whether they need a VPN or whether they need a proxy and so on.